Facebook page and group. You can like us and join us, I guess. We also have a Twitter. It's Thinkin' Sideways.
Without the G,
because we're so hip and cool. And you can always send us an email if you are the Mothman and you do have fingers and palms. Send us an email. That email address is thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com. Speaking of email, this is something we haven't done in a while.
Yeah, we've been a little tardy.
Listen, okay,
sorry about that. We get so much mail. We can't. We gotta have to hire a couple of interns.
We might actually have to at this point. You guys are sending us so much stuff.
That or I might need to get better at managing the inbox.
Yeah. Well, we did. We talked about this, I think, a couple episodes ago, where it was just like, wow, you guys have just suggested literally every unsolved mystery that any of us have ever heard of. So cool.
We're
just only going to do listener suggestions for the next 3 years. Awesome.
Yeah, we've
Anyways,
got a pile of them.
This one actually was not a suggestion, and I'm really, 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 really happy we got it. It pertains to the Bill Brennan episode.
Who's the guy from Las Vegas?
The guy from Las Vegas,
that was Devin's episode,
Yeah. And it's from a girl named Rachel, and she says, "Hey there, I'm sure you received a lot of email about this, but I just wanted to let you know that the Stardust sign is actually located in the Neon Museum in Las Vegas, so no worries, it's safe and sound. I highly recommend a trip to the museum if you find yourself in Las Vegas." And then she, of course, says that she loves our show and everything is perfect and wonderful in this world.
Well, no, I'm really glad to know that thing's not rotting.
I didn't. Yeah, and I had no idea there was a Neon Museum. That's awesome.
So cool.
I bet that thing is spectacular.
I bet, yeah.
I would. I need to find a reason to go to Vegas.
Yeah, me too.
Mainly because I need a reason to go to Vegas.
Aren't you getting married soon? Like,
at some point.
Why don't you just do that?
Yeah, that might have to be I don't like to spend money, but that might be a bachelor thing.
Or just take your lovely fiance and don't spend money on a wedding. I'm just saying. I know she'd be totally into it.
I don't think she'd be totally into that. That would not go over well. Well, we do have one other email that I wanted to share. Yeah.
By all means.
So this is from Jason, and Jason said, "You've probably heard this 1,000 times so far, but I recently discovered your podcast," and he did what so many people do. He binge listened to the whole catalog.
Wow. That's cool.
That's a lot of listening. Wow.
It's lots of listening to our stupid voices.
Jason, I hope you didn't neglect your personal hygiene or neglect to eat or anything like that while you were doing this.
Well, Jason did say that, of course, thanks for all the great work, which I appreciate and thank you. And he really enjoyed it. But this is what I found so great is that he said that he's never really listened to podcasts. So ours was the first one of only 2 that he does listen to, which I find that kind of a little feather in our cap.
That's kind of cool. What's the other one?
He didn't say. But what I did like is, and I'll just paraphrase this, is that he likes stories like what we cover, but he was having a hard time finding some place to explore them and talk about them. I guess he had tried to go on message boards and stuff like that. He'd gone to Web Sleuths, which kind of evidently, Web Sleuths gets a little depressing after a while.
Yeah.
And he'd gone to some of the paranormal boards, but of course, because he was trying to put up some alternate theories, they didn't like him so much.
Oh, really?
So, Jason, we like you. You're totally welcome here, and we are totally glad you found the show, and thank you for sending this email.
Yeah, thank you.
I've got to say, I did say Web Sleuths is
careful.
Kind of hard to slog through.
Careful.
Yeah, no, you can't spend a lot of time on that website.
Oh, yeah, I know.
We should be careful.
Yeah.
Anyways, with that having been said, to steal a phrase, we're going to get out of here. I'm going to not flap my wings and fly away.
Yeah, I'm going to shoot straight up in the air. And then, no, I'm not. Just goodbye, everybody.
Who?
Thinking Sideways.
I don't get it.
I brought the aliens.
You must unlearn what you have learned.
I don't know. Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Thinking Sideways, the podcast.
Ooh, that podcast?
That podcast. I am Devin, joined this week by
Joe
and
Steve.
And today we're going to talk about a mystery that I've dubbed the most disturbing drawing. 'Cause it is.
It took me a while to figure out that was a drawing.
Yeah.
I thought it was a weird art project.
No, it's a drawing.
Yeah, that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this actually was a suggestion by JW in July of 2015.
Oh,
A couple of years ago.
2 years ago.
Long time ago. Not quite
so
2 years
hopefully
ago.
JW still listens, and
Hey,
if so,
dude.
thank you.
Yeah,
Or
give us a
lady,
shout
I
out.
don't know. And actually, we're going to talk about the mystery of Mr. Cruel. Now,
That's cruel as in cruel.
Cruel.
As in nasty.
yeah,
Mean.
fair warning, as the name implies, this case involves some really horrible crimes against
Young girls.
girls,
Yeah.
actual girls, yeah. And we are going to be going into detail, so this is our standard small ears warning. Do-do-do.
Okay, I'm out of here.
We should have a sound effect for that or something.
I'll totally get right on that.
Okay. Can it be like that earthquake noise?
My standard go-to is always a cat meow, so...
I kind of like the idea of like, you know, when we give it the sound of like a bunch of kids yelling in terror and the stampeding noise
Yeah.
as they exit the room.
Perfect.
Oh, is it
Yeah.
like the Charlie Brown stampede when they all
yeah.
run through...
Yeah, exactly.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So,
I'll get right on that.
Yeah,
a
please do.
general overview of this case is Mr. Cruel, a still 100% unknown, officially
Unidentified.
100% unidentified man and general owner of one of the absolutely most terrifying police sketches of all times ever, abducted and raped 3 girls and possibly killed a 4th. He left literally no forensic evidence behind and was incredibly meticulous, and the police have identified 7 suspects that they have literally no reason to confirm or to rule out.
Yeah, I think this was a case of just rounding up the usual suspects.
Well,
and,
we'll talk about this when we get to it, but they interviewed a lot of people.
oh, they did thousands.
Yeah. The police actually think that Mr. Cruel is linked to another dozen or so attacks on children in the area. And all of these attacks are from the northern suburbs of Melbourne, Australia.
Yeah, say it right or we're going to get angry emails, Devin.
Yeah, come on. It's Melbourne. Calm down.
Melbourne.
Yeah, so we're going to just dive right in and talk about this. And I'm going to just go ahead and say 90% of the reading you're going to do about this stuff online is about like 4 paragraphs long. It's like a paragraph per victim. Thank you. But we have more than that. And actually, frankly, I thought this was going to be a breeze of a topic for me. Because when I first started doing my research, that's all I could find. And then I found this one kind of treasure trove in that the police in Australia have very recently, within I think it was last year even, released all of their documents to certain media outlets in Australia.
Hey, might as well. I mean, it's been this many years. It's
yeah.
been like 3 decades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of details about these, and we are going to go into it. So again, small ears or, whatever. Let's go chronologically.
Okay.
Okay.
It's a good way to go.
Yeah. It's also the way that everybody on the internet goes.
And the other way confuses me.
Yeah. At about 4 a.m. on August 22nd, 1987, in Lower Plenty, which is, again, a suburb of Melbourne.
Burn.
As mentioned before, a man wearing a terrifyingly tailored balaclava.
Bingo.
Yeah, balaclava,
Yeah.
yes.
You got it on
I'm
the
going to
first
say
try.
ski mask the rest of the time. Broke into a family's home. The identities of this family is officially withheld, and I'm sure that somewhere I saw it and somewhere you can find it if you dig enough, but let's just be respectful of these families.
Nah, that sounds fair. But their name is... Oh,
No.
okay, fine.
No. Police have dubbed this victim Jill. That is not her real name. The masked man gained access by, quote, removing a pane of glass, unquote, from a window in the living room. Though I'm not totally clear how he did that.
I actually think I know how that happens.
It wasn't
Did
breaking.
they use a rock?
No, I'm guessing that this is an older single-pane window, and the putty on windows like that is pretty easy to cut with a razor.
Oh, okay.
So you cut the putty and just peel it away, and then the pane just falls out. I've replaced window panes
It
this way.
kind of depends on how old the putty is. I tried it at my house, which is like 90 years old, and that stuff sets up hard as a rock. in
Right.
older
Well, it
houses.
depends on what people use. I mean, I know people who have used silicone caulking to seal in windows, and that stuff.
Not
Oh,
a
that
good
stuff
idea.
doesn't harden up.
Yeah.
no.
So
Yeah.
it really depends on what they're using. But That's
Yeah.
how I
Okay.
presumed he
That's
had the
good.
window open.
That's
This
good
is also
information.
Australia. They might use silly putty down there. We don't know.
Yeah,
No.
that would be silly.
Yeah, but this guy reminds me of the Axeman of New Orleans, because that's how he always gained on trade at his victims' homes.
Was the window?
Well, no, actually, he went through doors, but they were frame and panel doors, and so he would.
Oh, that's right. He'd take one of the
He
panels
would
out.
chisel out one of the panels,
Yeah. Yes.
and then reach in and unlock
Yeah.
the door from the inside.
Yeah. Well, the reason I say it wasn't broken is because the parents didn't wake up. This was a family home. It was the parents and then 2 girls. They had 2 daughters, and the parents were woken up by the masked man brandishing a large knife and a gun in the face of the parents.
In their faces.
basically, while they were asleep in bed. Yeah. And
Nice to wake up to that.
yeah, it
He
really
had a
is.
thing for that. I mean, I know he tapped somebody on the head with a knife once to wake them up on
That's
the forehead.
The next one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And before we go much further, I'm just gonna go ahead and cite my source on this because it does totally 100% appear legit. I have found stuff to back up the fact that this was one of the sources that the police gave the information to. However, I also know it's a tabloid. Just fair warning, the Herald Sun in the primary source for this information.
Wait, I thought it was the Sun in Britain was the tabloid.
The Herald Sun, when I did some Googling on it, it said it's a morning tabloid.
Okay. Like I said, I can't keep them straight.
Right,
So.
but as Joe said when we were having this kind of discussion earlier this week, when I said, "Can I actually use this as a source?"
Yeah, why not?
Joe said, "Sometimes tabloids are right," and I think
they
this is
sometimes are.
one of the instances
Yeah.
of that. And so I just wanted to go ahead and clearly say this could all be total fabrication, but I believe it. So this unnamed family says that Mr. Cruel had a knife and a gun, handcuffs, and nylon cord, as well as a small bag wrapped around his waist. When he woke the parents up, he handcuffed them. He told them to roll on their back. He kind of represented himself as a thief. Had them roll on their back, or on their stomach, sorry, and handcuffed their hands behind their backs. And then, I'm sorry, I got this family confused with a different one. There's a daughter and a son in this family.
Yeah.
So Mr. Cruel then goes into the boys' room, who this article says is 8, but I've seen other sources say the boy was 6. I've also said other sources say that they were in the same room.
Yeah.
So I'm not totally sure what the
I
truth
think this is an issue with a lot of these kind of stories where there's mixing of characters accidentally.
Yes. Either way, he goes and wakes both of the children up and brings them also into the master bedroom where the parents are laying handcuffed. He unhandcuffs the parents one at a time and then basically hog ties them with what's always described as an unusual sailor's knot, or a knot that somebody who's used to quote unquote tying large loads would use. I think that just means that that's a person who knows how to tie knots. But
Something besides a granny
Tying
knot.
large-
Yeah.
I don't know, but nobody ever says what the knot is.
Nobody ever
huh?
says what the knot is. No.
Okay.
He hog ties them, then he blindfolds the parents and gags them with tape, which is either electrical or surgical, again, depending on the source of the story. Mr. Cruel then ties the boy to the bed with nylon cord, blindfolds and gags him with the same tape, and then the girl was blindfolded and maybe gagged, but maybe not as well. And this is, surgical tape straight on the eyes, so not comfortable for anybody involved.
Yeah.
He says he's a robber. He says he wants cash and also a first aid kit. He also said he was going to take a shower and take some of the father's clothes because he was a similar size to the father. Mm-hmm. And he also wanted to shave and he wanted some food. Mr. Cruel took some clothes out of the wardrobe that was in the parents' bedroom and then told the parents to get into the wardrobe.
Oh, I bet that was cozy.
He covered them with a blanket. He then apparently tried to use the phone in the bedroom, but it didn't connect. Although, again, I'm not totally clear on how. I mean, they were blindfolded and covered with a blanket, so I'm not really sure how.
I feel like there was not a lot of narration by
Yes.
the perpetrator going on.
I would agree
All right,
with
I've
that.
got to call Bobby.
Well, it
Oh,
could have been,
click,
I mean-
click. Hello, click.
You know,
Yeah.
back in the day too, though, when people actually had phones that had handsets that went into the receiver, so everybody knew what the sound of a phone being
Yeah.
picked up
Yeah, I
was.
just wasn't sure how well
then-
you would be able to hear that necessarily.
Well, if you had a hard time with it with your dial tone, I don't know if you guys remember dial
Yeah.
tones or not.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You
go
would
tick, tick,
you would
tick,
click
tick,
the buttons
yeah.
a few times.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So maybe that's what he was doing, was hitting the button
Yeah,
multiple
so
times.
it didn't connect. And then Mr. Cruel went to check all of the other rooms in the house, and then he came back and actually placed a call this time, which apparently connected. During this call...
That's in quotes, the word connected.
Connected, yeah. During this call, he called someone a bozo and threatened the person on the other line, telling them that they'd have to move their own kids or something of that nature. After he hung up, he closed the wardrobe door and locked the parents in. Then he turned on a radio in the master bedroom very, very loudly to a station that is identified, and then took the girl into the bathroom.
And this is where the not nice stuff begins.
Yes. It actually turned out that this was his real motive. He was not there to be a thief, though he did take a few items from the house. But his real motive was to rape and assault the 11-year-old girl who lived in his house. He did this over the course of 2 hours. He carried out his attack on the girl kind of over this course of two hours, mostly in the bathroom, but also in the lounge room. He took breaks to rummage through the family's belongings. He took a break to eat some cold lamb, biscuits, milk, and orange juice. He made the girl floss and brush her teeth and bathe twice. Once after the first assault, and then once right before he left the house, which basically obliterated all forensic evidence that would have existed of his attack on her.
Thorough guy. He must have been watching CSI.
Yeah, in 87, yeah.
General
He
Hospital.
Then took her to a spare bedroom after 2 hours, loosely tied her up on the bed, and told her that she could count to 100 and then free herself and her family. She told the police that she waited to hear the door close and then ran to free her parents. And as I said, her name is not Jill. She's identified as Jill. That's not her actual name. But there are reports that Mr. Cruel called her Kate a number of times, which is also not her name, nor is it represented that that's close to her name.
Yeah.
So he was calling her the wrong name.
What do it mean?
I don't know.
I bet the police thought about that a lot.
I think they did, yeah. He actually had asked her name when the whole family was tied up in the master bedroom, so he was given her actual real name, but he was calling her Kate, which probably means something, but we don't know what.
Or maybe nothing.
Yeah. Obviously, the police were called immediately. They found, as I bet you can guess, almost zero evidence or clues. When the family said that Mr. Cruel had placed a phone call, they actually thought, of course, this phone number dialed could at least lead us to a person who had a conversation with Mr. Cruel. But it turned out that a call had never actually been placed, that Mr. Cruel had faked it, which is why he had, blindfolded everyone before he placed this call. He picked up the receiver and maybe there was no number that connected. He must have picked up the receiver and, pushed the things back down. What are those things called?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Clickers?
The receiver button,
yeah, the
or whatever
receiver
it is.
button
Yeah.
back down so that it didn't actually place a call and then dial the call and totally fabricated a half of a conversation just to throw everybody off the trail.
Which
And
is an overarching theme with this guy.
yeah, it
a lot
does.
of misdirection.
It does end up
Which is
being...
why I'm thinking that the whole Kate thing was probably deliberate.
I would guess that as well,
You
that
know?
it was deliberate, yeah.
Yeah.
And I also have the impression that Mr. Cruel was intentionally trying to give the impression that the rape of the 11-year-old girl was actually a crime of opportunity instead of a meticulously planned crime, which it actually was. That he was trying to give the impression that he just broke in and then happened to see an 11-year-old girl and rape her because
Thought,
she was there.
well, since I'm here.
Right, and then,
Ugh.
leave with stuff. But
Yeah,
he didn't
seems
steal
unlikely.
enough stuff for that to make sense. There was very little value in what he stole.
Well, plus, 2 hours, even for a crime of opportunity, seems like a lot
It's
of
a
time
really
to
long
spend raping a
time.
little girl.
Yeah.
I actually think that a lot of that time was spent in cleaning her.
Well, it could have been, yeah.
If he's as meticulous as he seems to be, and based on things that happen later on, I have a feeling that A, knowing a man's biology, and B, knowing how long it probably takes to clean somebody thoroughly to your satisfaction for a guy that goes to these lengths, he probably spent a lot of time scrubbing this girl down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's accurate. The other really interesting thing here is that despite the mask, the family was able to give kind of a description. They described the man as about 5'8" to 5'11".
What about Steve's height?
About Steve's height, yeah. Slim build with brownish, grayish, whitish hair.
Not like me.
And bushy gray eyebrows.
Definitely
I'm
not
not
like
totally
me.
sure how that was I guess it maybe was sticking through the mask.
Yeah, the eye
They're
holes.
kind of
Yeah,
knit. Well,
the
no,
eye
the
holes could've
eye
been-
holes. That's why that drawing is so scary, is because he'd actually tailored it so the eye holes were literally just.
They were much smaller
They
than
were
they
like
normally
maybe
be.
quarter-size holes that he had sewn together with white. It was a navy blue mask that he used white material on, and then he'd actually sewn
White
some,
thread?
Yeah, sorry, white thread on, and then so you can see the stitch marks. That kind of looks like a Coraline doll almost.
Uh-huh.
And then he'd actually sewn basically like netting or something behind the eyes and the mouth so that it would further protect him from leaving any kind of hair.
So it was like
or
Spider-Man's
blood.
mask.
Yeah, but way scarier. The mouth hole was also just a quarter size. I mean, it was just 3/4 size holes in this mask. It's super, super creepy. Super creepy.
Yeah.
So, but I would assume that maybe there was some hair sticking out through his mask.
Somewhere.
Which he could have actually, like, placed in there as another red herring.
He could have. It's
Yeah,
true.
maybe.
Absolutely, he could have. Despite the grayish, whitish hair and bushy gray eyebrows, they said that they thought that Mr. Cruel was actually in his mid-20s. He apparently had musty-smelling breath.
He did eat lamb, biscuits, milk, and orange juice.
Well, he had musty breath before then.
Well, he might have had lamb, milk,
Yeah.
biscuits,
Yeah.
and orange juice ahead of time.
And then he apparently also had a deep, gruff voice that sounded uneducated. And they said he had no accent, which of course means he had an Australian accent.
Of course.
He had an accent appropriate for the
Area.
With almost nothing to go on, this case went cold quickly, and it seemed to have been a one-time attack. There was some speculation again that Mr. Cruel had actually seen the family in a newspaper because they had been featured a couple weeks before.
Yeah, what was that article about?
I don't know.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember hearing about it.
I suspect
guess-
they don't talk about it because
that
then
would
you could identify the family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is not the only time that somebody is supposedly in the paper ahead of time.
No,
Yeah, it's not.
it's not. Let's talk about that. Because despite the, apparent one-time nature of this attack, it turns out, no, that's not the case.
Unfortunately, yeah, it happened again, didn't it?
Yeah, a year and a few months later, in December, on December 27th, 1988, the police found out that Mr. Cruel was actually a serial offender. The previous night, on the 26th, the Wills family which is comprised of John and Julie and their 4 daughters, were on their way home. They lived in Ringwood, which is another suburb of Melbourne, and they apparently arrived home at 10:45 p.m. The girls, of course, went promptly to bed. The oldest one was 10.
All right.
Her name's Sharon. So they were young. That was late. That's late to be up.
Yeah.
The girls all slept in one room on 2 sets of bunk beds. And then John and Julie say that they stayed up until about 1 a.m. And then John tried to go to sleep, but he couldn't, so he got up and did a puzzle until about 4:50 a.m., he says.
It's so weird.
It'll put you right to sleep.
Yeah.
That's a weird thing to do. I mean, I guess this is before the internet, so dinking around on Facebook or whatever isn't an option. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't think to just sit up in the middle of the night and put together a puzzle.
I would, because it's boring.
Depends on the puzzle.
You might go to
Good.
sleep. You know? I mean,
Some puzzles can be kind of like
some people are into puzzles.
meditation-like for people,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, almost exactly 30 minutes later, so at 5:30,
5:20, yeah.
5:20, Mr. Cruel came bursting in to John and Julie's bedroom. He just threw the light on and brandished a gun. He was still wearing that same navy blue mask. Julie screamed, but Mr. Cruel said that he was going to shoot John if she didn't stop, so she stopped because she loves her husband. He then had them, just like the last couple, lie on their stomachs and bound their wrists. This time he didn't put them in handcuffs first. He just immediately hogtied them. Well, I
With
guess
wire?
it's not hogtying because there was no connection between the arms and copper electrical wire with the same unique knot. Again, he claimed to be a thief. He then entered the girls' room. Sharon was the oldest of the 4 girls. She was 10. She was taken from her bed, and I read her account, and she said she was awoken by her mom's scream, but just kind of laid in her bed. Mm-hmm. And then she heard Mr. Cruel come into her room, and she pretended to be asleep still, which is smart, right?
Yeah.
And he left, and she heard him walk around the house and then come back and say, "Sharon, get up." So he knew her name.
Ooh.
And so
That's
at that
creepy.
point, she was like, okay, I have to get up. So she got up,
And he did not ask the parents what the kids' names were?
Not reportedly. Mr. Cruel selected some of her clothes to take with him, then took Sharon out into the living room, grabbed one of John's coats and had her put it on over her nightie, and then carried her outside and put her down. When he put her down, she started to scream again. So he actually shoved a ball into her mouth.
A ball gag?
Yeah, well, it was just a ball. It was
Right.
like a rubber ball, but
A ball is still a gag.
You'll see people describe it as a ball gag, which is a different thing these days.
Yeah.
Than
Yeah, depending on the community
Yeah.
you frequent, yes.
Yes. He said, if you promise not to scream, I'll take that ball out. And she said, oh.
Oh, better than choking to death.
Yeah, so he took the ball out and then he blindfolded her, maybe with tape, maybe with something else, and then placed some material she thought was like tied or glued together over her head, over the blindfold that she thinks was tape. He tried to confuse her by sometimes carrying her and sometimes making her walk until they got to a car. So this one is already different in that the last attack took place in the home. This time he's actually abducting Sharon.
Taking her somewhere else,
Taking
right?
her somewhere else. He put Sharon in the passenger side of the car and had her get on the floor of the passenger side. Sharon said that she thought it was an old car. And he drove for a little bit and then paused and said, Sharon, can you see? And she said, yes, because she could. And so he reinforced her blindfold by like taping it tighter and then put a blanket over her.
Sorry, I keep shaking my head. It's mostly because
I know. It's bad. I know. He continued to reassure her that he wasn't going to hurt her. Again, kind of this weird, I don't know why you're telling her this, but I think he didn't want her to be scared, I guess. I'm not sure.
What a nice guy.
He's
Yeah.
trying to encourage complacency.
Well, it's interesting, and we'll talk about this at the end when we talk about how Sharon described him, but there's some interesting stuff going on here. But he just said he was going to ransom her for money, basically.
So don't worry, I'm not going to hurt you.
I'm
I
not
just
going to
want
hurt you,
money.
I just kidnapped you, I just want money.
Well, that's always reassuring.
This, of course, turned out to be not true.
Oh.
He unloaded her from the car and carried her into the house and laid her on the bed. She was able to describe the house in detail. I'm not going to go too far, but she counted how many steps it took for her to get from the car to stairs and then counted how many steps up it was to the house and what side of the house the driveway was on. I mean,
That's a
Very
very aware
clever.
little girl
she
with
was
very good memory.
Very aware, yeah. Well, I think you would remember this sort of thing.
Well, I don't know, because a lot of people, those details disappear because
Yeah.
the brain, your brain just blocks that crap out. I was going to say another word, but it just shuts down.
Well,
He was thinking, I want to bring the police back here to bust his
I think,
ass.
yeah, and I think probably these memories are the things she was thinking about instead of the other things that happened to her later
That's
to
a good
try
point.
to get through.
Very
that,
good point,
you know? So he got her into the house and replaced her tape glue whatever blindfold with like iPads, like medical iPads, you know, those kind of
With the metal and the gauze.
Not iPads, but I mean iPads as in your eye and your head. Because iPads mean something else.
Yeah, no. I
Yeah.
think actually I think they're just like cotton.
Yeah,
they
I
make
know what
these
you
little
mean.
cotton pads that go over your eyes.
Yeah.
They don't have the metal or anything
Oh,
like that.
okay.
They're just
Basically the same thing, though. It's the cotton underside of what I'm
it's
talking
just
about.
yeah, it's just a little cotton. It's basically
Yeah.
just a cotton swab for your eyes.
It's a cotton pirate eye patch, yes.
Yeah. And then he, gently taped that so it was more comfortable for her.
What a
He
nice guy, again.
Turned the radio on and ran a bath. He had Sharon floss and brush her teeth and bathe, then returned her to the bedroom. She heard on the radio that it was 7 a.m. at that point and was able to identify the radio station. Not that that really helps anything. She also said that she heard some airplanes fly overhead. Mr. Cruel then raped and assaulted her and then made her a Vegemite sandwich with a glass of milk.
And that's why he's called Mr. Cruel.
Yeah.
The Vegemite sandwich.
I think
Yeah.
so, yeah. He said he was going to leave.
By the way, can you buy Vegemite anywhere here in the States? I've been
Yeah.
hearing about it for years. I've never
can,
actually
you don't want
tasted
it.
it. Oh,
You go to
really?
the
That bad?
Australian grocery.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So he said he was leaving. So he leashed her to the bed with some sort of harness around her neck.
You mean leashed or lashed?
Leashed.
It's
I've
always
heard-
leash.
I've heard it described as a very crude harness of some kind. I mean, think of a dog collar, but something that some weirdo
Little
just
bigger.
makes in his basement on his
Yeah.
own.
That's
out
how
of
I've heard it
stuff?
described as well. Although, granted, nobody ever saw it, right? They just felt it.
Right, but I mean, if some guy is trying to figure out how to attach fabric to material or to metal to then be able to lock it and chain it, like that would be why it's described as crude and felt.
Yeah.
Probably that way.
It probably was not very comfortable.
Yeah.
He left the radio on while he was gone to that same channel. And now here again is one of those instances where you think, God, these girls are just, especially Sharon, like, this is incredible.
She's pretty gutsy.
She is really gutsy. She, while he's gone, manages to lift her blindfold so she can see the inside of the room. So she is actually able to describe for the police, like in great detail, everything about the room, including, most disturbingly, a wooden tripod with a camera set up that was filming the bed that she was leashed to. Or was set up to film. It wasn't filming while...
I was going to say, I don't know that this was necessarily a video camera. It might have just been a still camera.
I think it was a video camera.
Okay.
I mean, this is the time where you could tell very distinctly between a video camera and a...
I am not in disagreement of that, but I've never seen it explicitly said what kind of camera she saw. That's why I say that.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
Actually, it's probably a good thing if he filmed all this stuff, because if they ever do catch up with him, he'll probably still have those videos.
And
His
again,
trophies.
we'll talk about this.
Great way
kind
to
of
lock his ass
in-
up for a long, long time.
Yeah, for real. Mr. Cruel returned. He bathed and cleaned Sharon again, and then raped her again, and then bathed her again. Then leashed her to the bed, but he checked on her often. He fed her and took her to the bathroom as needed. He asked her if she was comfortable. I mean, yeah, I know.
Of course I'm comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Finally, after 18 hours, he instructed her to take a shower instead of a bath. He washed her hair and her body very well, clipped her fingernails and toenails, then flossed and brushed her teeth again. Then he dressed her in a garbage bag.
I think more than one.
He had her stand on a garbage bag and then step into a garbage bag that had holes cut for legs. And then he put another garbage bag over her head, then cut holes so she could breathe, because safety third, I guess.
Breathing is important, I hear.
It is. He then put her in the car, again, on the floor on the passenger side, and apparently he had trouble starting it, telling Shannon that stolen cars sometimes won't start.
Which is not logical.
I think this is a red herring. Well, it's a little logical in that, if you've hotwired a car and you don't have the key for it, it's probably not going to start as easily as just turning the key.
Maybe. I'm not so sure about that, but that's fine.
I think it's a red herring.
Yeah.
That's just me. He drove for, quote, a long time, sometimes fast and sometimes slow, unquote, per Shannon.
Sharon, you mean?
Shannon. Have we been saying Sharon?
I think we've been saying Sharon.
It's Shannon.
Oh, it is Shannon. Oh.
Whoops.
Oh, okay.
This is probably obviously to confuse her. He parked, picked her up, and ran with her for some distance, stopping often to take breaks.
He's out of shape.
Yes. Finally, he put her down and told her how to get to a store nearby. He removed the blindfold, which was the trash bag that he had cut holes into. He removed it and said, don't turn around or else I'll shoot you. Yeah. And ran away.
That must have been a really weird scene for anybody to watch who didn't know what was going on.
It was midnight.
I was going to say, because a full-grown man running away from a small figure in plastic bags.
No, it was exactly 18 hours after she had been taken.
All right.
She had actually been dropped off at the Bayswater High School, which is about 3 miles from her house. And like I said, it was just after midnight. And Shannon approached a woman who was at a bus stop, and she reportedly very calmly walked up to this woman in trash bags and said, "My name is Shannon Wills, and I was taken from my home early this morning. A man left me here and told me to go ring home." Yet again, police were unable to find any clues or forensic evidence. The Wills family description of Mr. Cruel is pretty in line with the previous family's description, other than the voice. Shannon said that Mr. Cruel seemed to display some level of care and did not describe him gruff at all. And like the unidentified girl
From the first
from
rape
the first
victim.
one,
Yeah.
Shannon had been in the newspaper just a few weeks prior to her abduction.
I wonder if the gruff... I mean, we're already talking about the red herring a little bit, but it makes me